The gentle rocking of serendipity, our trusty camper van, was the first thing I registered, followed by the chirping of unseen birds orchestrating the dawn chorus. Mark was already up. I could hear the soft hiss of the gas stove and the subsequent clink of mugs. "Morning, sleepyhead," his voice rumbled, warm as the coffee he was undoubtedly brewing. I stretched, my fingers brushing the felt-lined ceiling, a familiar morning ritual in our compact world. We were parked beside a tranquil loch in the Scottish Highlands, the mist still clinging to the water's surface like a shy bride's veil. The air, when I finally unzipped our window cover a crack, was crisp and tinged with the scent of pine and damp earth. This was it, another day in paradise, another day of living deliberately. "Morning, love," I replied, my voice still a bit gravelly. "What have you to wake up to, eh?" I swung my legs over the side of our convertible bed, which by night was our cozy cocoon and by day, with a few deft maneuvers, transformed into our dining area and lounge. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee was now a rich invitation. Mark handed me a steaming mug, his eyes crinkling at the corners in that way I adored. He'd been my partner in crime, my rock, and my favorite comedian for over 30 years, and embarking on this van life adventure after we both hit the big 50 had only deepened our connection. "Spectacular, isn't it?" he agreed, gazing out at the purple-heathered hills rising majestically from the lochside. "Makes you forget all about TPS reports and board meetings," we both chuckled, a shared memory of a life that felt a million miles away now, a life of schedules and suits, replaced by waterproofs and whim. "So, what's on the agenda for today, Chief Explorer?" I asked, sipping my coffee. Our plans were usually delightfully fluid, often dictated by the weather, a local recommendation, or simply a road that looked intriguing. "Well," Mark began, a mischievous glint in his eye, "apart from soaking all this in, I had an idea for the channel. People are always asking how you manage to cook such amazing meals in this tiny space. How about we film a Cooking with Karen segment today? Show them one of your easy campervan specials." I paused, considering. It was true, our kitchen, if you could call it that, was a masterclass in miniature. A 2-burner hob, a tiny sink, a fridge that held just enough for a few days, and about 2 square feet of actual counter space, if you counted the lid of the cooler. Yet, I'd learned to make it work, producing everything from hearty stews to surprisingly decent baked goods. "You know," I said, a smile playing on my lips, "that's actually a great idea. It's about time I demystified the art of the microgalley. What do you fancy?" Mark's eyes lit up. "Something delicious, of course. How about that creamy tomato and spinach pasta you make? It feels gourmet, but I know you whip it up pretty quick." He had a point. It was one of our favorites, comforting, relatively healthy, and impressively simple, despite its rich flavor. "All right, pasta it is," I declared. "But we'll need to do a stock check. My spice rack, aka the biscuit tin, might need replenishing for some elements, and I think we're low on garlic." This was part of the van life dance, constant, small-scale inventory management. We couldn't hoard ingredients like we used to in our suburban pantry. Every item had to earn its place. Mark grinned. "Operation Pasta Procurement can commence after this sublime coffee, then. I'll get the camera gear ready. Cooking with Karen, Highland Pasta Edition, it's got a ring to it." I laughed. His enthusiasm was infectious. This wasn't just about making lunch, it was about sharing a little piece of our life, our solutions, our joy, with the community we'd built online, fellow dreamers and doers who found inspiration in our slightly unconventional retirement plan. The challenge wasn't just cooking, it was cooking for an audience, in real time, with all the potential for minor van-sized calamities. But hey, that was all part of the adventure. After a second cup of coffee and a short walk to stretch our legs and further admire the breathtaking scenery, it was time to embark on our culinary production. Mark, ever the budding cinematographer, began setting up his small tripod and camera, trying to find an angle that captured both me and the action zone, without him having to contort himself into a human pretzel. "Okay, chef," he announced, fiddling with a lens. The stage is almost set. Are your ingredients prepped and your nerves of steel in place? I took a deep breath, a theatrical gesture for his benefit. Ready as I'll ever be, darling. First things first, let's talk about workspace. I gestured around our tiny galley. As you can see, it's not exactly palatial. The key is to be organized and to clean as you go. One messy pan can make the whole van feel chaotic. I began by pulling out the necessary ingredients from our small, but surprisingly efficient, fridge and our cleverly packed cupboards. A can of chopped tomatoes, a bag of fresh spinach, an onion, a couple of cloves of garlic we'd picked up from a farm shop yesterday, panic over, a carton of cream, and the pasta itself. Right, I said, addressing the camera, which Mark was now pointing steadily at me. Today, we're making a super simple, super delicious creamy tomato and spinach pasta. Perfect for when you want something comforting after a long day of hiking, or, just because. I started with the onion, placing my small chopping board over the sink to create an extra bit of prep surface. This was one of my first van life kitchen hacks. Every inch counted. As I chopped, the rhythmic tap 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 of the knife was a familiar sound, a little piece of domesticity on wheels. Looking good, Karen, Mark commented from behind the camera. You make it look so effortless. I'd have an onion apocalypse in here, I chuckled. It's all about practice, and maybe a slightly smaller knife than you're used to. The first minor challenge presented itself almost immediately. I reached for my favorite wooden spoon, the one worn smooth with years of stirring, and it wasn't in its usual spot in the utensil pot. Has anyone seen my spoon? I asked, rummaging through the drawer that held a jumble of essential tools. This was the van life equivalent of losing your keys. In such a small space, things rarely got truly lost, but they could certainly play an effective game of hide-and-seek. Mark, ever helpful, put the camera down for a second. Was it not with the washing up from last night? I thought I dried everything. We both peered into the small dish drainer. No spoon. Ah, found it. I exclaimed a moment later, pulling it out from behind the olive oil bottle. It must have toppled over. Crisis averted, Mark said, picking up the camera again with a grin. The drama. Our viewers will be on the edge of their seats. I rolled my eyes good-naturedly and returned to my onion. Next came the garlic. As I minced it, the pungent aroma began to fill the small space, mingling with the fresh Highland air drifting in through the open side door. Then, a new challenge. The wind, which had been a gentle breeze earlier, decided to pick up considerably, gusting into the van and making the flame on our gas hob dance erratically. Whoa, hold on, Mark said, that draft is playing havoc with your heat. And my audio, probably. This was a common issue. Cooking with the door open offered lovely views and ventilation, but a sudden change in weather could turn it into a minor battle. Okay, Plan B, I announced. Mark, could you be a dear and just slide the door mostly shut? We'll still get some air from the roof vent, he obliged, and the flames settled down. Resourceful as ever, he praised. I sautéed the onion and garlic in a little olive oil, the sizzling sound a happy promise of the meal to come. Then I added the canned tomatoes, a sprinkle of dried oregano and basil from my trusty biscuit tin spice rack, and let it simmer. Now, an important step for van life cooking, I explained to the camera, is managing your resources. Water, gas, power, they're all finite. So, I try to be efficient. This sauce doesn't need to simmer for hours. 10-15 minutes will be plenty to let the flavors meld. I checked the small propane gauge on our tank. It was lower than I'd like, but definitely enough for this meal. Still, it was a good reminder to be mindful. No leaving the hob on unnecessarily. As the sauce bubbled gently, creating a delicious fug in serendipity, I turned my attention to the pasta. We used a single, deep pot for boiling pasta to save on washing up and gas, another little trick. While the sauce is doing its thing, we'll get the pasta on, I said. And here's a tip, I usually slightly undercook the pasta, then finish it in the sauce. It absorbs more flavor that way, and you don't risk it going mushy. Mark, from his vantage point, nodded sagely. I've always wondered why your pasta tastes so much better than my attempts. That must be it. And here I was, just blaming my lack of culinary finesse. His self-deprecating humor always made me smile. He was actually a decent cook when he put his mind to it, but he enjoyed playing the role of the bumbling apprentice when I was in my element. The next little hiccup occurred when I went to add the spinach. I'd bought what I thought was a standard bag, but it seemed to contain enough spinach to feed a small army. Goodness, I exclaimed, holding up the overflowing bag. We might be having spinach with a side of pasta today. Mark zoomed in on the bag. That's a lot of greens, Karen. Think it'll all fit? This was a classic van kitchen problem, underestimating the sheer volume of certain ingredients when faced with limited pan space. My moment came quickly. No worries, I said confidently. Spinach wilts down to almost nothing. The trick is to add it in batches. Watch this. I started adding handfuls to the simmering tomato sauce, stirring it in as it rapidly reduced in size. It was like a magic trick, the mountain of green leaves disappearing into the vibrant red sauce. See? I announced triumphantly, after a few minutes. All gone. And now our sauce is packed with extra nutrients and a beautiful deep green color. Mark whistled softly. Impressive. You're like a culinary magician, turning a potential spinach catastrophe into a triumph. I then demonstrated draining the pasta, reserving a little of the starchy cooking water, liquid gold, as I called it, for adjusting the sauce consistency if needed. Then, I combined the pasta with the sauce, adding the cream at the very end to keep it from splitting. The aroma now was absolutely divine, a rich, creamy, herby concoction that made my stomach rumble in anticipation. And for the final flourish, I said, reaching for the small block of Parmesan cheese and our miniature grater, a generous grating of Parmesan. Because, let's be honest, everything is better with Parmesan. I sprinkled it liberally over the steaming pasta. The moment of truth, or rather, the moment of plating, had arrived. In a regular kitchen, this is straightforward. In a van, it requires a bit more care to avoid spillages. I carefully spooned generous portions into our two favorite enamel bowls, sturdy, lightweight, and perfect for van life. And there you have it, I declared, holding up a bowl for the camera, a proud smile on my face. Creamy tomato and spinach pasta, cooked with love in the heart of the Scottish Highlands, in a kitchen smaller than some people's wardrobes. What do you think, Mark? He zoomed in on the bowl, his voice filled with genuine admiration. Karen, that looks absolutely restaurant quality. I can almost smell it through the lens. You've outdone yourself, my love. Proof positive that you don't need a mansion to eat like royalty. We decided to eat outside, the earlier wind having calmed to a gentle whisper. Mark quickly set up our small folding table and two chairs, positioning them to face the loch. The sun, now higher in the sky, dappled through the leaves of a nearby birch tree, painting shifting patterns on the ground. He turned off the camera, announcing, and that's a wrap for Cooking with Karen, for now. Time for the taste test, the best part of any cooking show. He took his bowl, and we clinked them together gently. To tiny kitchens and big flavors, I toasted. And to adventures after 50, he added, his eyes sparkling. The first mouthful was heavenly. The pasta was perfectly al dente, the sauce rich and flavorful, the spinach adding a lovely earthy note, and the cream bringing it all together in velvety harmony. Oh, this is good, Mark sighed contentedly, already halfway through his bowl. Seriously, Karen, this is one of your best. And knowing how easily you whipped it up in serendipity just makes it taste even better. I savored my own portion, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction. It wasn't just about the food, delicious as it was. It was about the process, the resourcefulness, the ability to create something comforting and nourishing in such a simple, pared-back way. It was a small victory, a testament to the lifestyle we'd chosen. We ate in companionable silence for a while, just enjoying the food and the incredible view. The loch mirrored the sky, a vast canvas of blue and white. A lone fisherman drifted by in a small boat, the only other sign of human presence. It was moments like these, simple, beautiful, shared, that were the true currency of our journey. You know, Mark said, wiping his bowl clean with a piece of leftover bread I'd found, people who think van life is all about roughing it and eating beans out of it can have no idea. Once lunch was devoured and declared a resounding success, the less glamorous part began, the cleanup. Washing dishes in a tiny sink with limited hot water is an art form in itself. Right, tag team? I suggested. You wash, I'll dry and try not to drop anything on the floor where it will inevitably roll under something immovable, Mark chuckled. Deal. Though if anything breaks, it was clearly your fault for handing it to me precariously. We had our system down pat. A small squirt of biodegradable washing up liquid, a collapsible washing up bowl to save space, and a quick, efficient process. Every drop of water was precious, so there was no leaving the tap running. As Mark scrubbed the single pot and our bowls, I dried them immediately and put them away. Clutter was the enemy in a small space. Putting things back in their designated homes straight away was crucial for maintaining sanity. That really was spectacular, Karen, Mark reiterated as he rinsed the last spoon. And you know, watching you work your magic in that tiny galley, it's inspiring. You make it look like a dance, I smiled, touched by his words. It kind of feels like one sometimes. You have to be mindful of your movements, everything has to have its place, and there's a certain rhythm to it. It's definitely different from our old kitchen, where I could spread out and make a glorious mess. We both laughed, remembering the sprawling countertops of our previous life, countertops that were often, admittedly, covered in culinary projects in various stages of completion. But there's a satisfaction in this, isn't there? I mused, carefully stacking the clean bowls. Knowing you can create something wonderful with so little. It feels more intentional. It absolutely does, Mark agreed, drying his hands. It's like everything in this lifestyle. It strips away the excess and leaves you with what's important. Good food, good company, incredible surroundings. He gestured out the open door of serendipity towards the loch, now shimmering under the midday sun. You don't need a Michelin-starred restaurant when you have this as your dining room. We sat for a few minutes, just enjoying the quiet aftermath of our meal and our little filming project. The initial buzz of production had faded, leaving a warm glow of accomplishment. I think people will enjoy that segment, I said thoughtfully. It's not about complicated recipes, it's about showing that good food on the road is achievable and enjoyable, even when you're working with bare essentials. Later that afternoon, as the sun began its slow descent towards the western hills, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, we found ourselves sitting outside again, mugs of tea in hand. The remnants of our pasta lunch were a happy memory, and the van was tidy and peaceful. This was often our favorite time of day, a time for quiet reflection, for soaking in the beauty around us, and for simply being. It's funny, isn't it? Mark began, staring out at the water. Before we started this, I think I secretly worried that we'd miss all the creature comforts, especially things like a proper kitchen and easy meals. He took a sip of his tea. But I honestly don't. There's a different kind of comfort in this simplicity. I knew exactly what he meant. Me too, I confessed. I used to love my big oven and all my gadgets. And don't get me wrong, there are days when I wouldn't mind a dishwasher. We shared a knowing smile. But there's such a profound joy in making do, in being creative with limitations. It's like it unlocks a different part of your brain. And honestly, I added, the meals we cook and eat in serendipity, surrounded by views like this, often feel more special than any fancy restaurant meal we ever had. This was a recurring theme in our conversations, the unexpected richness we'd found in downsizing our lives. It wasn't about deprivation, it was about a re-evaluation of what truly brought happiness and fulfillment. Trading a large house for a tiny home on wheels had, paradoxically, expanded our world in ways we couldn't have imagined. This whole experience, Mark continued, his voice soft and reflective, it really teaches you adaptability, doesn't it? Whether it's a sudden downpour when you're trying to cook, a road closure that sends you on an unexpected detour, or just figuring out how to store a week's worth of groceries in a fridge the size of a shoebox, he chuckled. Every day is a little adventure in problem solving, and he was right. Van life, especially after 50 when perhaps you're a little more set in your ways, is a constant learning curve. But the lessons were invariably rewarding. We'd learned to be more patient, both with circumstances and with each other. We'd honed our communication skills, because in a space this small, there's no room for unspoken frustrations to fester. We'd become a well-oiled team, anticipating each other's needs, supporting each other through the minor challenges, and celebrating the myriad small joys. And it's made us appreciate the simple things so much more, I added. A hot shower after a few days of wild camping, finding a laundrette in a remote village, a perfectly ripe avocado, or a meal like the one we had today, cooked together, eaten together, with the world as our wallpaper. This philosophy of living fully, which had become the unofficial motto of our travels and our channel, wasn't about grand, expensive gestures. It was about finding the extraordinary in the ordinary, about being present in each moment, whether that moment involved navigating a tricky mountain pass or simply watching the sunset over a quiet loch. It was about recognizing that this chapter of our lives, the one after 50, wasn't an epilogue but a vibrant new story, filled with its own unique challenges and triumphs. The satisfaction from today's Cooking with Karen segment wasn't just about producing a nice meal or creating content for our viewers. It was a deeper sense of contentment. It was the quiet pride in our self-sufficiency, in our ability to thrive and find joy in a lifestyle that many might see as daunting. It was the feeling of connection, to each other, to the beautiful environment around us, and even to the wider community of fellow travelers who understood the unique allure of the open road. You know, I said, a smile playing on my lips, I think today's pasta adventure perfectly encapsulates what we're trying to share. It's not about having it all, it's about making the most of what you have, wherever you are. And finding beauty and flavor in the process. Mark reached over and squeezed my hand. Couldn't have said it better myself, my adventurous chef. This is exactly why we do this. For moments, and meals, like these, the last rays of the sun kissed the hilltops, and a profound sense of peace settled over us. As dusk began to settle, painting the loch in shades of deep indigo and silver, we started to think about tomorrow. The beauty of this life was its inherent unpredictability, but a loose plan always helped. So, Mark said, stretching, that coastal path we spotted on the map yesterday, the one that supposedly leads to a hidden cove with a seal colony? Fancy tackling that tomorrow, weather permitting? My eyes lit up. Oh, absolutely. Seals and a coastal walk sound like the perfect follow-up to a day of culinary excellence. We'd learned to balance our days, some were for exploring, some for chores like laundry or shopping, some for driving to new locations, and some, like today, for creative projects and simply soaking in our surroundings. Right then, I said, feeling a familiar stirring of anticipation for a new day's adventure. Coastal walk it is. I'll make sure the hiking boots are ready and the snack bag is prepped. Perhaps some of those oat bars I made last week, if you haven't secretly eaten them all. Mark feigned an innocent look. Me? Never. Though they were exceptionally good, chef, we laughed, the easy, familiar banter that was the soundtrack to our life on the road. Today had been a good day, a delicious day, a day that reinforced all the reasons we'd chosen this path. It was a reminder that joy can be found in a perfectly cooked plate of pasta, in the challenge of a tiny kitchen, and in the shared experience of creating something wonderful together. Well, folks, I imagined us saying to the camera if it were still rolling, though now it was just the two of us and the whispering wind, that's another day wrapped up here in stunning Scotland. We hope our little cooking demonstration showed you that delicious, hearty meals are more than possible, even in the coziest of campers. Mark would chime in, it's all about a bit of planning, a dash of creativity, and a willingness to embrace the adventure, even in the galley. We'd learned that sharing these small slices of our life, the triumphs and the occasional funny mishap, resonated with people. It wasn't about presenting a perfect, airbrushed version of van life, it was about showing the real, relatable, an ultimately rewarding journey of two people in their 50s who decided to trade routine for the open road. "Thanks for joining us for lunch, so to speak," I said to the quiet lock, a smile on my face. "We hope it inspires you to find your own flavor of adventure, wherever you are. Until next time, keep exploring, keep tasting, and keep living fully, 1 mile, 1 story, and perhaps one delicious campervan meal at a time." Mark put his arm around me, and we watched the first stars begin to prick the darkening sky, content in our little home on wheels, ready for whatever tomorrow might bring.